Peace, 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 y'all. This is Chocolate Almond. Gotcha. No more Chocolate Almond Raw. That name is gone. I'm in SHU. SHU Almond Raw. I've changed my name, so in fact the ancestor says no more. Not only just that, to be honest with you, when I started digging deeper about Chocolate Almond Raw, the name chocolate, it doesn't have a true power meaning to it. And I was looking in another format. So I had to go to the ancestors, and the ancestor says it's up to you, but we'd rather for you to dismiss that name. SHU, S-H-U, Amun Ra. SHU is a deity dealing with the wind. It's a wind god. He was a wind god up in the sky. Get into that later, because today we're in a whole new avenue.
Have you ever wondered?
Today is about Latinos and Hispanic. Are they black? Are they white? Who are they? We gonna get into that. I am SHU Amun Ra. And I want to say this to you. Today, we're going to get into it. It's going to be a series. How long it's going to be, I can't tell you. But I'm not going to make it difficult. I'm going to make it as simple as possible. Because it's coming to the point that we need to stop repeating the same cycle. Because that's all we're doing. We're repeating the same cycle. Just because you speak a language, does this determine who you are? We're going to ask ourselves these questions. Today's going to be a lot of video clips to help explain these differences between here in America, outside America, different countries, dealing with Spain, dealing with Brazil, dealing with here in these islands, dealing with the Dominican Republic, dealing with Haiti, which is Haiti and Dominican Republic is one island, it's split down in the middle by a river. We're going to deal with all these things. But one thing we're going to find out for sure, why does skin color seem to have a problem? Define your identity when your language and where your country you was born into has to deal with your skin color. And why do Latin people with fair skin have a problem to identify with Latin people who's dark skinned? Why is this divide through divisions is so important? Sounds familiar. Sounds familiar. And why so many Latin people want to push away the heritage of African descent? Because the deeper you go in your research, pay attention. The deeper you go in your research, you're going to find out that you are African, whether you like it or not. Let's get into it. I want to get into the first DVD. I don't want to waste no time.
What's the difference between the terms Latino and Hispanic? Most people use these words interchangeably, but there is actually a difference. There is a huge overlap, i.e. most people who are Latino are also Hispanic, and vice versa, most people who are Hispanic are also Latino, but not everyone. But what exactly do these words mean? Unfortunately, like so many things, neither of these words have an official, universally accepted meaning. But let's start with the word Hispanic. The word's origin comes from the Latin word Hispanicus, meaning from Hispania, which was a former province of the Roman Empire. If you translate the word Hispania from Latin into English, you get the word Spain. This is because this is where the name of the country came from. The Spanish word for the country Spain is España. So the term Hispanic generally means things relating to Spain, people who are from or whose ancestry come from Spain or any other Spanish-speaking country. So this means that people from Spain are Hispanic, while people from Brazil or Portugal are not. Most Hispanic people speak Spanish as their native tongue, but it's not a requirement to speak it as your native language, or even at all, as long as your family originates from a Spanish-speaking country. So Hispanic would be people from any of these countries. Spain, plus the majority of Latin America, with the notable exception of Brazil, which speaks Portuguese. However, there is another Spanish-speaking country in the world, not in Europe or the Americas, but in Africa. Although the majority of Africa was colonised by the British and the French, there were small parts that were colonised by Spain, and there is one country in Africa in which Spanish is the primary official language, Equatorial Guinea. So, are people from Equatorial Guinea Hispanic? Well, it may be a Spanish-speaking country, but their people would almost universally not be considered Hispanic. This is due to huge cultural differences and the fact that Africa was colonised much later than the Americas and in a very different way. Most Spanish people left after independence. And although Spanish is spoken by about 88% of the population, only about 10 to 15% have a high competence in the language. And remember how I said people of Portuguese descent were not Hispanic? Well, this is true in that most definitions exclude Portugal and that Hispanic only applies to Spanish-speaking countries, but an argument could be made that people of Portuguese descent are in fact Hispanic. Hear me out. The Roman province of Hispania consisted of the entire Iberian Peninsula, and so technically people from Portugal, and by extension Brazil, are originally from Hispania. In fact, in 1985, Tony Coelho of Portuguese descent applied to join the Congregational Hispanic Caucus, but he was denied entry. He then showed them a map of the Roman Empire in which Hispania covered the whole Iberian Peninsula, so they let him in. Some dictionary definitions do include Portugal, but generally speaking, the term Hispanic does not refer to people of Portuguese descent. So moving on to Latino, while the term Hispanic includes people from Spain and excludes people from Brazil, Latino is basically the opposite. People from Brazil are Latino, while people from Spain are not. The definition of the word itself is actually incredibly simple. It just means someone from Latin America. Easy. The problem comes from identifying where exactly Latin America is. Latin America is everywhere on the American continent that speaks a language derived from Latin, a Romance language. The term Latino in English comes from a shortened version of the Spanish word Latino Americano, meaning Latin American. However, this could cause some confusion because although the word Latino is an English word, it's also a Spanish word, meaning Latin. So for example, El Alfabeto Latino would be the Latin alphabet, or Países Latinos would be Latin countries, which could potentially refer to any country that speaks a Romance language. But people from, for example, Italy are not Latino, because the word Latino in English means Latin American, and Italy is in Europe, not in the Americas. So where exactly is Latin America? Obviously here in this general area, but where exactly? Some definitions are as broad as everything south of the United States in the Western Hemisphere, but this definition is far too inclusive. In Central America, there's Belize, which speaks English. There's plenty of English and Dutch-speaking countries and territories in the Caribbean, all of which should be excluded from Latin America. In South America, there's another English-speaking country, Guyana, and Guyana is bordered by Suriname, which was colonized by the Dutch, and bordering Suriname is French Guyana. So, should French Guyana be included within Latin America? Latin America is generally thought of as the Spanish-speaking countries in the Americas, plus Portuguese-speaking Brazil, but the other Romance language that exists on the continent, French, is often forgotten about. As well as French Guyana, there's also Haiti and the French West Indies in the Caribbean. In fact, the term Latin America actually originated from France. So Latin America would be Mexico, part of North America, all of Central America, excluding Belize, the majority of South America, excluding Guyana and Suriname, and in the Caribbean, Cuba, Dominican Republic, Puerto Rico, Haiti, and the French West Indies. So like I said, there is a huge overlap between the terms, which is why they're so often used interchangeably. But there are so many differing definitions of Latin America, most of which are, well, wrong. For example, Oxford Dictionary says that Latin America is the parts of the American continents where Spanish and Portuguese is the main national language, but this definition neglects the French-speaking parts. Merriam-Webster has two definitions, Spanish America and Brazil, but once again this excludes the French-speaking parts, and two, all of the Americas south of the United States. But like I said earlier, this definition is far too inclusive. Possibly the best definition is from dictionary.com, which defines Latin America as the part of the American continents south of the United States in which Spanish, Portuguese and French is officially spoken. But there are other factors which further complicate matters. Just because a country speaks a certain language doesn't mean the whole country does. The biggest example of this would be Quebec in Canada. The official languages in Canada are English and French, with English being the more widely spoken. However, in Quebec, the sole official language is French and is the dominant language in the province. So, should Quebec be considered part of Latin America? Possibly, although almost universally, Quebec is not included within the definition, possibly due to the massive cultural and geographical differences. But on top of that, not all people within a Latin American country...
Okay, I hope you got a good description about the different parts of Latin and Hispanic. See, the thing is this. Just because you speak Latin doesn't mean you're from Spain. Just because you speak Latin doesn't mean you're from Brazil. It doesn't mean you're from Africa. Each continent, someone came, or some army came and did what? Conquered it. Spain was conquered by the Moors. The Arabs also conquered Spain. Now, what we want to know is, was these people speaking Latin before that? Now, when you do a little research and go a little deeper, which we will, because we're going to take our time on this. We got no other choice. Because too many of you really are you're working with the curse. The same thing, it always goes back to slavery. The Spaniards came down, was part of the slave trade. The French was part of the slave trade. The Dutchess were part of the slave trade. The Americans were part of the slave trade, and so on and so forth. But but it happened, excuse me, when they came down and conquered these lands, especially the islands. A lot of you keep forgetting. A lot of these islands, names are based on generals who conquered these lands. And when they conquered these lands, they stamped their name on these islands. Now, make sure you got your pencil and paper, because I don't want you to just take my word for it, as well as I'm showing these videos. I want you to do your research. Don't follow me. Do your research. The whole thing of class is to learn, not to follow. It's to learn. I'm basically giving you a push. Don't forget, SHU is just the messenger. I'm not your preacher. I'm not your reverend. I'm not your deacon, your minister, your pastor. I'm not a scholar. I'm not an archaeologist. I'm not an astronomer. I'm not a scientist. I'm not a mathematician. But I am your messenger. And I come here every Sunday to give you the message, and you take what I put out and do your research. That's what it's all about. So we can break this curse. Break these curses. Buy 1804. So if you buy this DVD, which is a documentary, and it's based on telling about 1804 Hades, talking about the Haitians and the Dominican Republic, I'm telling you, if you really want to get deep, you buy the Hidden Color documentaries for them. Then you also buy Out of the Darkness. You buy these DVDs and get these books, and you begin to understand why are you trying to pull away from your African culture. Yes, if your father raped that African woman, which 75% they done, you're mixed. But here come the catch. Let's go back 400 years. Your father was white from Spain. They came down and was part of the slave trade. From that point on, they had children, raping, and all kinds of mess, right? So the children came out brown, my complexion, mulatto, Creole, because all French, that's where these names come from French. All mulatto and Creole, those names are for French. French people made that up. Mulatto, Creole, and light skin, and so on and so forth. These names get deep. But to understand clearly, your father was white. But when you get older and you marry or have a baby by a black man, then your child is now black, mixed with his grandfather's blood, which happens to be a Spaniard. So now you got the Spain blood, also the father that had a child, whether it happens to be a son or a daughter. That father is African because the two were slaves that got together and had a child. That child is now, because you are what your father is, that child is an African grandfather / Spain. But your immediate bloodline is from Africa. Your descendant bloodline is from Spain. Understand that? Your descendant means farther away. But your immediate bloodline is the father who helped give birth to his woman naturally or by force. So, understand the concept. Understand the concept. Because the problem is with a lot of you, you'll sit there and go, I'm Spanish, I'm Latino. I already gave you, these words really don't mean anything. If you hear, I'm born in America, and your mother was born in Puerto Rico, the island, which Puerto Rico is a name, that island, if you do the history, slave trades went through these islands. Understand that. But if your father happened to be born in America, and he happened to speak Latin, because he was taught this as a child. Now, who are you? Because a baby, when a baby is born, the baby could be taught any language and will pick any language up. And also the baby can learn how to speak as many languages it will understand and begin to dissect and then speak. So, if the baby happen to be fair-skinned, and in that area, they happen to speak Latin, but the baby was born here in America. The mother is born in Puerto Rico, but her husband is born in America. What makes that baby? That baby is an American that happens to speak Latin. Now, did you learn the word how to speak Latin in Spain? No, you did not. The child learned how to speak Latin here in America. Because if you don't know your heritage, you don't know your descendant, your descendant could be anywhere, as the clip showed you. Your descendant could be Portuguese, you could be Brazilian. What if your people came from Canada or Africa? You see, you have to also understand that the Spaniards, they were conquered over and over again, as well as they conquered when they came here. Speaking Latin got nothing to do with where you come from. Latin is a language. The question is where the language originated from. But to sit there and say I'm not black is ludicrous. I'll say it again. It is ludicrous. Let's get into another tape, another video. We're going to get this, we're going to break this down real deep. Because y'all sit up here and talk about, oh, I'm not black, I'm this, I'm that. You don't know if you white, black, whatever. You might not be. See, the color code text, this is where you get the problems from. Everybody want to stamp, let me reverse that. So many people want to stamp color code text because of our skin color. And that's where you got one of the biggest bigotry that's constantly in motion. Because if you don't break the curse of the Willie Lynch ain't got nothing to do with black or white race. Slavery, it's got to deal with slaves. Language, whoever language was speaking at that point in time and that area they was in, that's the language they were speaking. A slave is a slave. Understand this. Let's get into the video.
But on top of that, not all people within a Latin American country are Latin American. This is because many Latin American countries have a large indigenous population. There are more than 50 million people in Latin America of Amerindian descent, nearly 9% of the total population. The largest ethnic group of the indigenous peoples is the Quechua people, some of which can trace their roots back to the Incan Empire, the largest pre-Columbian civilization in the Americas, most well known for constructing the UNESCO World Heritage Site, Machu Picchu. However, the majority of people in Latin America are a mix of both European and Amerindian descent, known as mestizo. Generally speaking, most people who are mestizo speak Spanish or Portuguese as their native language and would identify more with their European ancestry rather than their indigenous ancestry. Although one country which is an interesting exception to this is Paraguay. About 95% of Paraguay's population is mestizo, but the indigenous language of Guarani is actually more widely spoken than Spanish. Therefore, far more of the mestizo population would identify more with their indigenous roots rather than their European ancestry, compared with that of the rest of Latin America. So like so many things, the definition of exactly where Latin America is often comes down to convention rather than any strict criteria, and not everyone agrees on exactly where that definition is. The terms Latino and Hispanic are generally only used in the United States, so much so that some definitions limit its use to people who are actually living in the USA. The US Census Bureau asks a specific question relating to Latino Hispanic ethnicity, but the words are actually used interchangeably by the Census Bureau. The only reason it includes both words is due to regional use. Latino is more widely used in the western United States, while Hispanic is more common in the east. The term Hispanic was introduced by the Census Bureau in 1970, and its definition specifically stated that it referred only to Spanish speakers and background. Although despite this, 1/6 of Brazilian immigrants identified as Hispanic. And that's just it. The census data relies solely on self-reporting, and ultimately that's exactly what ethnicity is all about, self-identification, and whether a person identifies with a specific culture which they want to be part of, or choose not to identify themselves in any way if they so choose. I think it was best summed up in an article by the Pew Research Center. Who's Hispanic? Anyone who says they are, and nobody who says they aren't. Thanks for watching.
So I want to thank you for watching that video. And what I will tell you this, that is just one of my research. I don't just go off and go, well, that's it. That's the answer. You notice that they only gave you a very small portion of Africa, dealing with the Guineas, huh? Also, they didn't tell you where the Spaniards come from. It didn't give you that. See, this is why I wanted to break it down to you. It's basically giving you what was going on probably in the last 200 years. It doesn't break down where Spain, the population of Spain people come from, or the civilization. It didn't tell you that. So when you watch these videos, don't just take that and go, oh, I got the answer. No, I used that video to help you break down between the word Latino and Hispanic. Okay? Then it gives you an easy breakdown of where the population and most of these people speak. As you can see, it gave you a few definitions. If you looked at some of those people dealing with the Mayans, melanated people. The Mayans were melanated, much darker than what you see there. Trust me when I tell you. So, when you do your research, you will see they were much darker than that. Those are descended from these people, these indigenous people. So I gave you a clip today. And in part 2, you're going to see more clips. You're going to see comedian and sense of humor that's going to break down the Latin world. But it's going to use it in a sense of humor way. And a lot of you please don't get offended, because you get offended so quickly. Quick fast. You don't need to. Understand class and understand why I'm doing it. You're not going to learn this in church. I don't care what church you go to. They're not going to sit down and break down heritage. They don't do that. Everything is about Matthew, Luke, John, Paul, what's in the Bible, what Moses did, and what David did, and what Solomon did, and all that stuff. What about you? What about you and what you're doing? And we need to know, is Latin people black? We know they come from Spain, which is a European continent. Excuse me. We know that. We know that these people came from the Caucasian Mountains. Not just white people. What kind of white people? We know they had to spread out. We know that the Africans conquered them. We know the Moors conquered Spain for 600 years. It might be 700, so I could be wrong about that. So, SHU, AMUN, Ra, I have to say, see you in part 2. Is Latin people are black? And why do they seem to not to want to identify? We're going to get into that, why they don't want to identify. We know that. See you then, boys, girls, brothers, sisters.